Thanks for your patience.
Okay, I think I've counted to 10. We will go ahead and get started. So I'd like to call the City of Mount Vernon City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 24, 2020 to order. The time is now 6:03. If you would be so kind to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, item C is our roll call of council members. As usual, I'll go a little bit slow. Council member Brocksmith.
Here.
Council member Carrillas.
Here.
Council member Hudson.
Here.
Council member Hulst.
Here.
Council member Beaton.
Here.
And Council member Molinar.
Here.
Great, thank you. Under our consent agenda tonight, we have items A, B, C, D, and E. It's the approval of the October 28 regular council meeting minutes, approval of November 4th study session minutes, approval of the November 12 regular council meeting minutes, approval of the November 20 payroll checks, direct deposits, and the November 24 claims.
I'd move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Mark and a second by Gary. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed tonight? Motion carries. Thank you so much. Under reports tonight, item A is our review of emails from the public, and I'll turn this over to Peter Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. There are 3 letters that were sent in to City Council this week, either by email or by mail. And the way that the public can do that is by emailing City Council at council@mountvernon.wa.gov. And I bet that address is on the screen as I speak. The first one is from Peggy Anderson, and Peggy writes, "My concerns are with how Mount Vernon supports the homeless population. Temporary winter shelters are important, but the long-term solution is for Mount Vernon to work with the county to acquire a permanent drop-in shelter with the goal of getting help to these neighbors of ours and helping them return to contributing members of this beautiful Skagit Valley." The next letter is from Brian Hill. Brian writes, "It was only last week a 16-year-old girl was struck by a hit-and-run driver. The city is as much to blame for this as the hit-and-run driver is. The stretch of road from North 30th to Wa is a dangerous stretch of road, and the city has been told that time and time again. All too often, you can hear people race up and down that road. I walk up and down that stretch of road all the time, and I have personally seen cars go anywhere from 20 to 45 miles per hour above the posted speed limit. I have seen cars race up and down there all the time. I have even almost been hit by speeding cars while I was crossing the street. I saw a car and a pickup racing each other, and they must have been going 90 miles per hour. I have told the city time and time again that if they do not do something, something like this was going to happen. I was not the only one either. In the last 4 months, do you know how many patrol cars I have seen on that stretch of road? 1. That's right, just 1, and that was a state patrol car. The police do not patrol there, and they need to do so, both day and night. Now, because the city was warned and did nothing about it, because the police do not patrol that stretch of road, a young girl is fighting for her life. Sad, Brian Hill." And finally, a letter from the Friendship House to the Mayor and City Council. "Good afternoon. On behalf of the residents and guests of the Friendship House, I want to say thank you to the members of City Council and the Mayor for the recent Mount Vernon Cares nonprofit grant of $10,000. We face the challenges of homelessness and hunger each day. It helps pay the daily costs of providing a warm place to sleep and hot each day to our neighbors who need it most. Friendship House continues to be on the forefront of the effort to end homelessness. I can tell you our emergency and transitional shelters, as well as our Friendship House Cafe, have not missed a day of service during the current pandemic. This financial support helps us continue this important work as we strive to provide those in need the first steps to a fresh start. Again, thank you for your support. Respectfully, Jerry Shackett, Program and Development Manager.
All right, great. Thank you, Peter. Next up under reports is our department updates. As council knows, during our pandemic, we've kind of rolled some of our committee agenda into the regular council meetings. So first up is our Development Services Department. So I'll have Chris Phillips, our Development Services Director, take it away.
Hi, thanks, Mayor. And what I will do is I'm going to hand it off to Rebecca. She's got two topics that will be going. She's already sharing her screen here. So Rebecca, how about if we kick it off?
All right, thank you. Good evening, Council. Can everyone see my screen? I'm assuming you can, thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. So the two items that we have on your agenda tonight was first a discussion of the 2020 code amendments, and then we've got a commercial and residential project update for you. So as you're aware, this year, your staff we've presented you with 3 different sets of code amendments, and all 3 of them have been interim regulations, which really is pretty unusual to have 3 different sets of different types of regulations presented to you in this way. So I've created a few slides just to make sure there isn't any confusion procedurally about what we've been doing, because it really is highly unusual that we've done things this way. But I'll also explain there's some reasons why it's been done. So the first set of regulations was the permit extensions for the timelines. Just because of the COVID, we offered a 75-day extension on all of the permits that our department processes. And then I also came to you recently and asked that you put in place interim regulations for both emergency weather shelters and for our safe parking ordinances. And I think what makes the last two maybe even a little more confusing is that we've had prior interim regulations for those as well. So I thought it might be helpful just to give you a little bit of background with regard to what's required when we do interim regulations and why we do them. So big picture, when as staff we come to you and ask you to adopt interim regulations, we do that without a public hearing to start off with, and it's because there's a real need to do that. In the case of the permit extensions, we had permits that could have expired with developers that had invested a lot of time and money, and so time really was of the essence. And as you know, to get permanent regulations adopted takes months and months to do. So sometimes we need something to be in place immediately, and then we follow it up with the permanent regulations. But in particular, what I think, just to make sure to point out to you, is that when we do interim regulations, like the ones that we did in September, we're required to then follow up within 60 days with a public hearing. And that's because we adopted them without a public hearing to start with. So we really do sort of the process is almost backwards in that case. And not that I wasn't going to read the state law to you, but this is the section of the state law that makes it very clear that when we do interim regulations, we have to follow that up with public hearings. And you've got 2 of those public hearings later tonight. So really, when we're looking at interim regulations, we have a layer of additional procedural requirements. So as you're aware, code amendments already are procedure laden. We have all of the items on the right-hand side of the screen here that we have to go through anytime that we ask you to adopt regulations. But then when we do it with an interim regulation to start with, we end up seeing you 2 additional times to do that, because we go to council to start off with and ask you to adopt the interim regulations, and then we come back to you for the 60-day hearing And then we also do everything else that's required when we do code amendments. So really this slide is just showing just that those are, we add to that process. So with regard to the emergency weather shelters and the safe parking, I think I've inadvertently, I've compounded the confusion here, because ordinarily when we do interim regulations, we'll ask you to adopt, and then we have the 60-day hearing. And then following that, we go through all of the procedural items. But really, because time is of the essence here with this one, I've condensed it even further, mostly just because we've had these interim regulations in place since 2019. So really, I felt comfortable moving ahead and going through some of the procedural items, which has created a process that looks just like what I've got here on the screen. So as you're aware, when we do code amendments, the two ways that code amendments can be initiated are by council. You can do that through your docket, or you can make requests of staff as you do through the years. And then here I've got in 2019, since we already had these two ordinances in an interim ordinance state for well over a year, a lot of the research and the code drafting had already taken place. Then we move up to September 28th, where I appeared before you and that you adopted two ordinances, which were 3811 and 3812. And the reason that was so important to do that, and I think I mentioned it that night as well, is that we could have been looking at a couple month time frame where if somebody had approached the city and wanted to do either an emergency weather shelter or safe parking, we would have had no regulations in place to allow them to do that. So as staff, we felt it was important to fill that gap and make sure that those regulations were there so that we could permit them, which is why those ordinances were presented to you that evening. In addition, we also had we thought we were going to see a safe parking program running. Unfortunately, I think it will be coming, just the timing is such that I think it'll be a little bit longer before that gets up and running. But regardless, we had the regulations in place in case somebody did come to us and do that. And then I've got the other procedural items that we've been doing in tandem. And then on December 9th, I'll be back before council with potentially the permanent regulations if you'd like to have that hearing. And I've got a couple slides devoted to that in just a minute, just to see if you do want to move forward with doing those permanent regulations. If you do, I've got all the procedural items completed, and you could on December 9th if you would like to do that. So in short, I thought I'd just give you just a quick review of these two ordinances, what they contain, the emergency weather shelters and the safe parking. As I stated, for the emergency weather shelters, there's been 3 prior ordinances that have dealt with the same issue. Since 2019, the way this works is that the mayor would declare a severe weather event. These shelters can be opened by a religious establishment, fraternal organization, public agency, or other entity. The request is made to the city. What they need to do is demonstrate basic life safety requirements. The building official issues a temporary use permit, and the shelter must close 2 days after the severe weather event. And this was you last saw this again with Ordinance 3811 in late September. This particular set of regulations, as your staff, I feel very comfortable with, and we probably mostly because we've actually used them, which is really if there are going to be things that we want to see changed, just apply regulations to a real life situation one time, which we were able to do when the county opened their cold weather shelter at the senior center. I think that was last year, which was, so really this was the set of regulations I think will work well for the city. So the other set of regulations, the temporary homeless encampments, or what's also called safe parking, also has had two prior ordinances, but there are some real differences, and there's another twist on this set of regulations, and that twist is that between the time when the council adopted your prior ordinances in this last March, there has been state law adopted. Which has meant that some of the items that were in the ordinances that council last saw had to be changed because, of course, we have to be consistent with state law. So I've just got two slides to just show you what this ordinance has and really to highlight the differences between what you saw previously and what is in these ordinances now. So this set of regulation has to be on property that's owned or controlled by a religious organization. The ordinance before you allows one vehicle per 10 existing parking spaces. They still require indoor-outdoor restrooms. There's a 6-month maximum in the regulations before you, but then we also have a way that through a councilmatic action, council can extend that for however long as you see fit. Of course, there's no permit and no fees. It's just a notification. They're still required to give notice to the neighbors in the city. And this was Ordinance 3812 that you saw in late September as well. So changes to this, as I said, this is the state law that was amended in March of 2020 that had a direct effect on the proposed regulations. Now, I will say that the interim regulations that were before council in late September, they incorporated these new items that are required by state law. But so I'm just pointing these out to council just to give you a just background on what you saw in 2019 versus 2020. So the current ordinance allows, of course, and it's just straight out of the state law, one vehicle per 10 existing parking spaces. In 2019, this legislation, the city's legislation, allowed 5 vehicles with a not to exceed more than a total of 12 individuals. The state legislation requires a 6-month minimum. Doesn't really affect us because we already had it at 6 months, but the state law is very specific now. And it required that we had a requirement that vehicles must be parked next to each other and to the extent possible not be visible from the surrounding public roads. That requirement has been removed. We removed a requirement limiting the safe parking from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. only, and removed the on-call monitor and the neighborhood relations plan. However, I don't want to make that sound like these are things that that would just be kind of a free-for-all, because it most certainly wouldn't. I just wanted to remind council that folks in these types of programs are still required to comply with all of the public health and safety requirements that anyone else in the city would be required to comply with. And I think the best example that I can think of is our noise ordinance. There's other examples, but I just mentioned that because as a city, we don't have to put in this ordinance that you have to comply with the noise ordinance. It's just a given that you have to do that anyway because we have those regulations on the books. So there are ways we will be making sure that there aren't other violations within these types of facilities. So here was I told you I'd have just a question for council. I was hoping to get input tonight. I have got 3 sets of code amendments that could be before council on December 9th. I've got them all set up. That doesn't mean they can't be canceled and moved. That's absolutely no problem to do that. But in case you were willing to do those, I thought it would be nice to finish up with those and be able to move on with other things. So these three code amendments, of course, are the permit timeline extensions, the emergency weather shelters, and the safe parking. I would say that the emergency weather shelters and the safe parking, we could absolutely wait until the first quarter in 2021 if you wanted to, without having. I wouldn't have to come back to you with another interim ordinance with anything to do that. However, if you wanted to wait on the permit timeline extensions, the current ordinance does expire in early January, which means I'd need to come back to you at some point and extend those interim regulations, or else those are going to expire.
So why don't we pause for a minute? Maybe we can take that question one by one.
Perfect.
That was easier. So for the permit timeline extensions, would you like to see that back on the agenda on December 9?
I'd like to see it on the December 9th agenda myself.
I agree with you, Mark.
Me too.
I think by the reactions, I think that's a good indication. Excellent. We'll have that back. All right. Emergency weather shelters ordinance. We do have a public hearing on that tonight as well. What do you think? We could bring it back. It doesn't mean you have to take action on the 9th, but we could bring it back for that.
I guess my question would be, the current emergency weather center interim ordinance that we have, when does that expire?
We would be fine until sometime in March with those interim ordinances.
Okay, so if we had
both with that and the safe parking.
Okay.
And is there a drawback to just doing them now and getting them out of the hair?
They would be permanent regulations versus temporary. That's the only difference.
Yep. And we'd be done with them and would move on to other items. But like I said, the emergency weather shelters, I think that's a pretty straightforward one. The safe parking, it's council's call on that one.
I'll just throw in my 2 cents. I think we've talked about them quite a bit, and their ordinances regulations are in pretty good shape, and like to just have the discussion and hopefully approve them and move on.
I would echo what Councilmember Brocksmith said. I think we've really looked at these, we've studied them, we've done our homework, and if they're ready to go, let's go ahead and do it and move on to other things.
And I'd agree with that also. I think that we've made the changes in the safe parking ordinance that are required by state law. And I think we're ready to go with it. So we might as well just get it done.
Agreed with that too.
Okay. Thank you. That's excellent direction. We will have those then back before you on December 9 for, again, another discussion and adoption if you choose. So
perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Council.
All right. This was just a reminder slide that, we do have other sets of regulations. I really provided this not so much for council, but sometimes if we get others who are calling in, just to remind them that we're only talking about the cold weather shelters and the safe parking. We already have regulations for the permanent shelters and the temporary homeless encampments on the books, and we're not touching those sets of regulations with what we're talking about now. And then if it's okay to move on, we've got the project updates.
Go ahead.
All right. So just a few items for you guys. The Mount Vernon School District's Old Main permit is like right at the finish line. We're just, I'd be surprised. I think that permit will probably be issued sometime later probably tomorrow or early next week. So that's really exciting that We've gotten to that point with the district, so that's great for that one.
Hey, Rebecca, just let me chime in real quick. On this
sure.
one, I'll just let you know we've had a few pre-con meetings with the school district to include the superintendent and Bill Nutting, his deputy, as well as the contractor, Leidig, that's running that. Again, everything is looking very smooth with that particular project and all the special types of inspections that are going to be required there. So we want to make sure that we ironed all those out, and we are good to go.
Yes. So we also have two site-specific comprehensive plan amendments that will also be before council on December 9th. Those are the two that you saw as part of your docket earlier this year and that we talked about. I think it's either the last committee meeting or the one before that. That's the one. One of them is the Woodmancy project that's just north of the Old Summer Sun Nursery, east of Martin Road, and the other is owned by the Camex and is at the corner of the southeast corner of Division and 18th. So what else have we got? We've got the permanent supported housing project at 1925 East College Way. And I've started to put the addresses on these because it's really easy to get these two projects between that and the Housing Authority's project on College Way mixed up. But the permanent supported housing, we are currently working through their design review and site plan approval. As you're aware, when council adopted the regulations allowing the permanent supported housing, part of those regulations were to make sure that not all of our design review, but certain portions of it were required to make sure that we have or will have a very attractive building that will be built on this site. So no issues necessarily, just there's always that point in a project where there's the back and forth, getting it into compliance, which is what we're actively doing right now. And then the Housing Authority also has got their project at 4100 East College Way. And we were actually just able to issue their notice of application and propose SEPA determination this week after they provided us with the information we needed about the historic contamination on that site. They unfortunately disclosed all of the contamination, but then forgot to give me all the information regarding the cleanup and what they had done. So they finally were able to do that. So now we not only have a complete file, but some of the concerns that we had have been mitigated. So that was a really good step in the right direction with that one. So we will see the comment period for that will toll for the next approximate 2 weeks from now. So it's good to have that one moving along as well.
Any questions for Rebecca on these?
Can I just make a comment and this is a great list. Thank you so much for the update. The last time we chatted just a bit here in council about the Housing Authority's project, we were all kind of wondering about them leaving a little bit of density on the table. I did chat with some of the board members for the Housing Authority about the project and where they were, and they clarified that they were pretty far down the road with design and funding before we were able to complete our ordinance that provided that bonus density for program housing. So they did certainly think about that, tried that, just couldn't make it work in the timeline that they had. But it does seem like it's a great project that they've got drafted. I can't wait to hear more about it from the Development Services Committee. I'm sorry, the Development Services Department. So I just wanted to provide that update to my fellow council members.
Although I would say, Councilman Brocksmith, just to be fully transparent, when I was looking at that density, I wasn't even taking into account our bonus density ordinance. There is still, and I'm happy I can email it out to the mayor and council, There's quite a bit of density and you didn't even need to use the bonus density program that could have been achieved on that site. And they were aware of it because we had those discussions had been had with them. And I mean, and I don't just.
Yeah, I'm just sharing you what I heard.
Sure.
So, thank you.
Any questions from council on these particular projects or something that you've noticed going on? Because there's definitely more than this.
Exactly. I know. I go through my project list and I kind of think, what would I find interesting? So yeah, I'm always happy to answer questions or if you see signs. And you guys, I do hear from you guys every now and again. I'm always happy to let you know what's going on.
And Mayor, just one, oh, by the way, is just on the personnel front. So when the budget was passed, we were able to advertise for our senior planner position that is actively being out for folks to submit their resumes. And closing on that is the 3rd of December. And then we'll go through the process of that hiring with working with Aaron and HR, as well as our code enforcement officer. So Ken's going to be retiring here in the January timeframe will be his last day. He actually will retire in February. And we also have that code enforcement officer position is actively open for folks to apply for it as well. And we have a fairly tight timeline over the December timeframe to get somebody on board to facilitate about a 2-week turnover with Ken, because there's definitely quite a bit of work to do with code enforcement and that individual feeling comfortable with the job.
Great, thanks, Chris. Any questions for Chris, since you've got your director and senior person here? Okay, moving on then. Thank you. We'll go to our Parks and Enrichment Services update. And so I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer Berner, Parks and Enrichment Services Director.
Good evening, Council. Nice to see everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. Okay, is everybody able to see that okay? Great. Wanted to just give you a little update in regards to where we're at with Parks and Recreation. And we have been busy hanging a lot of holiday decorations, which hopefully many of you have been out to see the decorations. I actually went out with my family and walked this last weekend and looked at a lot of the decorations and the trees in a lot of the windows. So staff wrapped all the light poles and placed the bows on 18 light poles there along Kincaid and Cleveland. If you do go out, you'll probably notice that some are lit, some are not. So we are working with our Public Works Department and getting someone out there to help us get all those light poles lit. So wanted to let you know we are on that. We're working with our Public Works Department to get everything up and operational so it looks not quite so splotchy in some areas, but what is up I think looks really nice. So we rent a lift and we wrap all the poles and then we hang the wreaths there, there at Jasper Gates. We also do all the wrap 24 poles there along and in the plaza. So there's 7 in the plaza and about 17 along the Riverwalk that we get up. And then staff, we were busy putting up the tree. I actually helped put the tree up this year, so I kind of understood what was going on. And so next year we're going to have hot cocoa and some Christmas music as we do this. So we all get into it a little bit. So we might invite everybody out. But this was, it was quite a thing to watch. You know, you put the base together and then you fluff out all the different little limbs that go into the tree, and voila, you have a tree at the end. So it's it wasn't lit, but I think it's going to get lit here soon. They didn't want it lit until they actually did their kind of grand opening thing that they were going to do after Thanksgiving, I think, with the Downtown Association. And we also in talking with Ellen at the Downtown Association, was wanting to make sure that we could to kind of light up that downtown area just to get as many people coming to the downtown area. So last year this tree did not get lit, but this year we made sure that we got all the lights on the tree at First and Division. And that one does have the lights on it, and it looks really nice at night. So we get our lift truck out, and as you can see, gentleman there in the bucket truck leaning over, getting all the lights on that tree. One of the other things, or a couple other things that we do this time of year, beyond, picking up all the trees that get blown over by all the wind and the leaves and all of that good stuff that happens, we also winterize our sprinkler systems. So we get a big air compressor, and we take that around to all the 19 different systems that we have, and we blow out all of the sprinkler systems. So we don't leave any water left in the pipes. And that helps so that we don't have any breakage of our pipes through the winter. And when we try to get them up and operational this spring, we have less issues that we have to deal with. The other thing we're busy doing is cleaning out all of our facility gutters so that we, again, don't have any issues with flooding or breaking the gutters off because they're too full and too heavy. So we've got about 19 different facilities that we go around and take all the leaves out of the gutters this time of year as well. And just trying to take some time right now and take this opportunity to review and update a lot of our policies and procedures that haven't really been touched for several years. So these are the different policies and procedures or contracts that myself and Rochelle, our admin staff person, and I are tackling and trying to get all of these or most of these updated prior to us being able to start to operate our programs again. We have an instructor contract that has been updated and reviewed by WCIA. Kevin is now looking that over for us to make sure it'll be up and operational, ready to go for us. Facility rental policy and procedures and fees, we are going to be starting on that one. Picnic shelter rental policy, procedures and fees, that's one that we'll probably be jumping on sometime in January. Banner policy, procedures and fees, we just finished that one up. Field rental policy, procedures and fees, we are going to be looking at that. That's the one we're working on right now. The Arts Commission doesn't have any bylaws, so we're gonna get the bylaws set up for the Arts Commission in January, and we'll be working on that and bring that back to council. And then class registration, cancellation policy, and fee structure, we'll be working on that as well. So that's kind of our push, so that we, as we talked about, we're reimagining what the Parks and Recreation, especially on the recreation side, could look like as we go forward, and want to make sure that we kind of have that ground set first. And these policies and procedures do that for us. And so as we get them finished up, we'll share those with council just so you can see them and see what they are. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So that's all I had for you this evening. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
Any questions for Jennifer?
I just want to say how much I love the Christmas lights and all the work that they've done. It's really pretty and very festive, and I just want to relay my thanks to you and your staff.
You are welcome. I'll be sure and pass that along.
I couldn't agree more. We were down there the other night, and there was a lot of people out, and even though we're supposedly in sanctions, it was nice to see people getting out.
Melissa, were you trying to say something?
Well, I'll just ditto what Mary and Gary said. I spend most of my waking hours in downtown Mount Vernon, and it's pretty dark this time of year, and it's really neat to see the light, especially at this time in what will be history. The light gives me hope, and I hope that if it's giving me hope, it's got to be giving other people hope too. So thank you very much, Jennifer, and to your staff as well. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It actually, I think, did all of us good putting them up as well.
And we wanted to do Kincaid for, many years. And so Jennifer stepped up and said, what else can we do? And so they took it upon themselves to get kind of a little gateway, like come down to First Street, So thanks for their staff for that.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Then we'll move on to an administrative update. What we did is council had some questions with budget. And so Gary Owens is here. He's got an update on purchasing, but then also an update on surplus vehicles as well for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Gary, and I have a slide that I have for him when he's ready to talk about budgeted expenses.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So I was asked to be here tonight to answer any questions council may have on the purchase of new equipment and vehicles for the 21 budget year. So if you had questions on that, I'm here to answer anything you have.
I think, Gary, what the question was on sort of what we've had in the budget to purchase. In years past, due to some of the uncertainty around budget, we delayed purchasing for the first quarter. And so maybe you could speak to the vehicles and how they take a while to get. That's just from what I heard you had spoken about in the past.
Well, I recommend we purchase equipment right away, even this year if possible. Once we place the order for this equipment, we don't pay for it until that piece of equipment arrives. And some of the custom vehicles, like the ambulance there, for instance, you're looking at 9 to 11 months to get that piece of equipment. So we need to order early. We need to beat the rush, because if we're late ordering, we're way down the list. So that pushes us even farther out. And by ordering early, we want to jump on any price savings we can get. If we wait January, February, on the average, most companies take a 5% increase on their equipment. So we don't want to spend needless money if we have to. So I like to order right away if we can. Our garbage trucks, 11 months to get a garbage truck out. So anything custom built takes a long time to get. So we need to for the best interests of the city, we need to order early and get that equipment ordered and get it coming. So I recommend as soon as possible.
So any questions for Gary from the council on that? And that being said, if we have to come before council to kind of approve some of that ordering sort of in December, we will go ahead and do that just based on kind of Gary's expertise. So any questions? Okay, great. And then I think, Gary, you have some updates on surplusing.
So I wanted to update the council on the surplus equipment. So we sent 30 pieces of equipment to Murphy's Auto Auction. And actually we done, in my opinion, the best we've ever done. So after everything was said and done, them 31 pieces, the city netted $168,497.05 for that equipment. And that's best we've ever done. So I feel really good about that coming back into the city. You asked me here a couple months ago, we had one more piece of equipment, a fire rescue vehicle. And we were going to send it to Murphy's, but they did not give us, they don't have a reserve on their auction. It's whatever the price gets. So I was asked to see if we could get more out of that vehicle. So we listed that vehicle on an online auction, governmentdeals.com, and we run it for 30 days. So currently, the auction closed yesterday, and we have a $15,000 offer on that vehicle right now. So I would like to ask the council whether they want me to pursue trying to get more for it and run it through another auction, or accept the auction price that was given to us as of yesterday.
Gary, what did you think it should be valued at? Can you give, I can't remember.
Well, I feel this truck should bring 30 to 35,000, and I put a reserve of 35,000 on this truck when we entered it into auction. we did not achieve that. So this is a specialized piece of equipment. It's an air compressor truck. It is a nice vehicle, but it takes a certain people to want it. And so far, we've been unable to find that certain customer for it. So
Do you think there's other options or other
there
avenues that
is.
you could
It
explore?
just it requires a lot of time, you know. So we could pursue it if council likes, but currently we have a $15,000 offer on it. So
Personally, I would like it if you could see if we can try it again in a different way. Maybe
we'd have
see if we can get some more.
We'd have to try a different auction or rerun it through this auction one more time. And sometimes that sparks another person that's interested. So
Can you
if
run
you
them
would,
at the same time, Gary? On two
I
different
could try.
auctions? Can you do it that way?
Well, not really.
Okay.
You know,
Wasn't
it'd be kind of like a conflict of interest. You know, you have
Okay.
to run it through one party, and then if you want, and if it doesn't close in 30 days, then we'll have the right to move to a different one, or we can just run it through this same auction company again. We did have a lot of reviews. We had about 1,100 reviews on this, but we only had 2 or 3 bids on it. So if council likes, I will rerun it tomorrow morning for 30 more days, and we can meet with you again and see how it goes.
So Gary, that doesn't cost us anything to run it.
No, it does not.
No cost until we actually sell the vehicle.
Right, and then it's a 10%.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead and rerun it.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
Melissa, I saw you unmuted too.
I was just going to say, if it doesn't take much of Gary's time, let's go ahead and see if we can't get more money for the city.
Nope, we'll run it again tomorrow morning.
Okay, that looks like a consensus. Okay, any other questions for Gary? What you may have ask is when he does sell those at an auction, just in general, the surplusing, that money goes back into the ER&R accounts. And if Doug were here, I think he would tell you that. He's on vacation this week, so. Okay, great. Thanks, Gary, for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then. On our agenda, item C is our council member comments. Is there any council member comments this evening? Okay. Seeing none.
I would like to.
Oh, go ahead, Iris. Sorry.
Yes, I just would like to comment, and it's about the email Peter read about what is going on in the community with this girl. Accident happened. I personally know this family. I personally know this student, and they are a migrant family. And I would like to see. I've been in touch with Chris, and I talked to him. He explained me what is going on in the investigation. But personally, I don't want to sound like I'm taking this personally, but I would like to see what we can do as a community members to move things a little faster in this case, because what I know for the mother's mouth is the daughter. She's in crisis in Seattle. She doesn't know what life is going to have after this, because doctors told her she has brain injured, very severe injured, and it would be so sad to her and the community. This is the second issue happened in the community, and it's been not to being taken personally, but as a member of the community and be a voice of those people they don't voice. I would like to please ask all my colleagues as a councillors and the mayor and the police department, please try to do the best in this investigation and just move, do something, because we don't want to hear negative comments in the community just because things like this is repeating again. It just please, I bring my voice to all of you, and let's all work together. And I know Kristen explained me this is something we need to go through, follow the rules and everything, but please, I just would like to see something, collaboration and empathy with this family and with most of these students, because today is the student, tomorrow can be somebody else. And what the lady said in the email, it is true. I have seen so many cars driving more than I've been having cars behind me honk me when I'm driving 25, 30 because they want to go over the speed. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Okay. I know Chris turned on his video. I will say when we have crime that occurs, it's really important that we have successful prosecutions. And so for our detectives to do what they feel they need to do to then pass those charging decisions on to the prosecuting attorney is really, really important. And so I believe the family's been communicated with quite a bit as to the status. And then there was a press release really late today. So Chris, I don't know if you want to maybe update on that press release that went out really quite late this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Chris. Thank you for your comments, and also too, thank you for reaching out when members of the community are talking to you, because sometimes there's individuals that talk to you that don't talk to us directly. But we did make an arrest today in this case of the driver of the vehicle. This has been a difficult case investigation on a number of fronts since the beginning, primarily just due to the age of the victim in this case. And one of the things that I communicated with Councilmember Carrillo when she reached out was it's really important in these cases, as difficult it is, to have some patience to let the investigative process go through. One of the balancing acts that was going on with this was the status of the victim's injuries. And we were very encouraged today to hear that she was showing some signs of improvement. One of the things that comes into play in this is that if the severity of the injuries also go to then the severity of the charging as well. And so there's, case strategy that has to go on with that as far as charging. And at the same time, there's evidence collection that goes on with vehicles and interviews going on with people. So I just wanted to say with today, they've compiled enough that the driver was arrested in his crime, and now the investigative piece will start to be finished up and the prosecution piece will take over. So, and I'm happy if any community members or other individuals, Councilmember Crias, that feel the need to meet and discuss this, I'm happy to do that if need be.
Thank you very much, Chris. I know for sure you're doing your best. Thank you. I really appreciate your words and your explanation, and I do really understand. But I just wanted to make a comment here for my other colleagues. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Iris. Mark, did you have a comment?
Well, I just had a quick question for Chris, actually, okay. Kind of as a follow-up on this. If he wants to come back on, there's his pretty face. So, Chris, I'm just wondering, I travel up and down that road quite a bit, and I don't see a lot of excess speeding going on, but I know that it's a concern within the community, at least for some folks. And I'm wondering if we've given any consideration about putting our speed trailer up there to see if we can't curb some of that activity.
You bet. We have done that in the past. I think that's a good suggestion, and we can do that again real soon. You bet.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good suggestion.
Thank you,
Jill,
Mark. I think that is thank you, Mark, for your suggestion. I think that's great.
I think it would be interesting to see what the changes might be with the light being in there now too. If it's changed any habits of people driving that road. I know people do go fast on that road. I'm kind of quite frankly unsure of what we can do because it's a state highway. I don't really understand how that breaks up with the setting of the speed limits. Do we need to petition the state? How does that work? I don't really know. And so I'm just throwing that question out. Maybe that could be something on a future discussion. I'm not really sure.
So whenever we consider changing speed limits, there's got to be science and data that goes into that. And so we can absolutely ask Public Works to pull data that they may have, but then also, like as Councilmember Hudson correctly pointed out, there's a new light at 30th and College Way as well. So that would definitely be different. And it would be this, I believe, the state's jurisdiction to do that. But I think we do sample the speeds, on a kind of a basis with Public Works, so we have that data, and I'll ask Public Works when that comes around next, if how soon we would be sampling that.
Can I make one other, Mayor,
Yeah.
can I make one other comment on it?
You bet.
Just too, since people have brought up speed, and I don't want to get into all the details of the case, but I will say that in the investigation, this wasn't an instance where speed was directly involved. The vehicle was actually making a turn. The pedestrian was crossing 35th Street when it happened. So, obviously there's head injuries involved, and those can, come from strikes and objects and stuff. So that's all what's been going on in the investigation too. But I just wanted to make that point since you're discussing the speed aspect.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. Are there any other council member comments tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to Mayor's report. I just wanted to bring up one topic. The Association of Washington Cities Legislative Priorities came out. Oh gosh, a while, sorry, I've lost track of time, a little bit ago. And in speaking with one of our state representatives this last week, we kind of talked about if there were some priorities for the city. So what I thought I'd do is just run through quickly what the AWC priorities had adopted were, and then ask if council would like to have this conversation both at our December 9 meeting, and then again we have 3 meetings kind of scheduled in December, and if they want to adopt that legislative agenda, if there's anything different from the AWC priorities. So what I thought I would do is go ahead and share and just again quickly review what's there, and then I'll of course send another link out to council and have it in your packet of what those priorities are, and what that could mean for the city. We've traditionally adopted, agreed with most of the AWC priorities and included it in a legislative agenda. The first one, and again, this is for, Association of Washington Cities, which is statewide. That state shared revenue. So of course, continuing the state investment via revenue sharing, which has been in recession times, has been a source of consternation when cities have that disappear. So that's a big deal. Restored, enhanced, and increased shared revenues, since we know that cities do a lot of the lion's share work right directly with the people. So especially things like criminal justice, and then greater flexibility to spend the municipal criminal justice assistance account. And that one particularly, I think, would be great for us to be supportive of in the city of Mount Vernon, because what that means is using those shared revenues on proven efforts that support public safety, such as behavioral health co-responders, so things like a social worker, or diversion programs, which is something that we're standing up here and partnering with Skagit County on, is the community court, which we've talked about. So again, it's just taking those state shared revenues and making sure that we still have them and that we're as flexible as possible. The other major priority is under transportation revenue package. We are so blessed here in the city of Mount Vernon that our voters supported a transportation benefit district in the form of increased sales tax. Some have done car tabs, so it's a little different, but in any event, supporting new transportation revenue package with increased resources for the cities. And some of the details on that is really focused on under maintenance of what we already have. Improve local revenue options that can provide more revenue for communities to invest in our systems, and then continued funding for Transportation Improvement Board and Freight Mobility Strategic Investment Board. We've gotten some wonderful grants from the TIB that have really helped us in our projects in the city. So of course, we'd love to see that continue, not just for us, but for other cities as well. Under fiscal flexibility, continuing that revenue authority and flexibility to keep up with community growth and increasing needs. Flexible fiscal options to use existing restricted funds to support essential programs during the economic downturn. So what that is, we've kind of talked about that with council, is, REIT funding has very specific requirements around how that money can be spent. Is there a way to do some very temporary flexibility to those options if those are needed for cities? And then responsive revenue options to include revising the property tax cap to address structural budget challenges. And that's really comes from a lot of other larger cities that find that even the 1% tax increase every year is makes it difficult to keep up with inflation and cost of services. Item 4 is housing stability. This is hoping that the legislature will take up rent assistance payments to support tenants and landlords, additional state resources for statewide eviction mediation and legal aid services, and foreclosure protection assistance for homeowners as well. And again, that a lot of that's definitely wrapped around effects of our pandemic. And then lastly, the priorities revolve around statewide policing reforms. This was something where if these were to come from a statewide source that cities could support. So expansion of the grounds for an officer to be decertified, and that's really around use of force, that there could be decertification for that. A requirement that officer misconduct investigations be completed regardless of an officer's resignation. Sometimes officers resign and then the investigations are dropped, a lot of time for the cost involved. Establishment of a duty for all officers to immediately intervene and report misconduct. Increased mental health supports and resources for officers. Additional training for officers, including adequate financial investments from the state. So that's if they are going to mandate even more training, which they already mandate training, that there would be some funding to help. A fully funded basic law enforcement academy, that's not necessarily new to the pandemic. It's something where there was a state legislation around very specific court fees that were to pay for basic law enforcement. Legislature has kind of swiped those funds in years past, therefore kind of causing backlogs of getting people into the academy. And then establish that statewide police reforms, establish that the statewide reforms are not subject to collective bargaining process. So those are the AWC adopted priorities. What I could suggest, if there is any council members that want to work with me in the next couple of weeks to propose something to council around that, that would be fantastic. But I just wanted to not forget to do that this year, since things kind of get away from us on dates, admittedly so. Any thoughts on our own city legislative priorities? Mark?
So before I would, and some of those priorities are great. Some of them I have some questions about, and I would want Chief Kamek to chime in on any of the law enforcement revisions or legislation that is proposed there, and I'd like to find out, how would that directly affect the operations of the Mount Vernon Police Department, and what kind of costs would we be looking at? And I'd be happy to help you if there's no other council members who want to work with that.
Okay, something we can prepare for sure.
I'd be happy to step up on that one, Joe.
Okay. Mark and Mary, anyone else? We could probably just zoom on it and go through it. Okay. The other question that had come up from one of the legislators I was speaking with was if the city was going to be putting in a capital budget request, and I admittedly had to chuckle a little bit. I was like, oh, is there money for that? Because that's not really what I had heard. So, however, I plan to touch base with a few other of our legislators and ask if that's something that we should do. I'm a little tentative on it, only for the fact that we had done our last budget, capital budget request was for the Mount Vernon Commons project, which we were awarded $1 million. That was two sessions ago. And as we hope to launch into design and engineering in 2021, our construction would be maybe 2022. Would we want to sort of reserve our ask, for when we want to make a nice, big, robust $5 million ask, when we've got a little bit more down the road? But the legislator mentioned, well, why don't you just put it in? So maybe our little group can kind of talk about a strategy around that as well. Any thoughts around that? Okay.
Well, you and I spoke about that earlier today, and you have my opinion on that. And I don't know if you talked to Chief Kamek about the other item that I suggested maybe we put on the capital budget.
Yeah, haven't really gotten there with him yet. So, okay.
So on the legislative priorities, I'd be curious what some of our what the county's asking for, and I did track that a bit through the county process that they had a few weeks ago, and also some of our more critical partners who are helping us right now in the pandemic, like Community Action and the state association, looking at state community block grants and things, and how we might be able to, if there's something that's really important to the city, if we might be able to add some support to that. But I don't have that information immediately in front of me.
I can certainly ask for it. In general, those other agencies, if there is a bill that advances specifically, they'll ask us to help support on that, or write support letters or things like that. So it's a little bit more specific rather than generic. But I haven't heard from anyone else yet either. So
If there's an extra slot in the work group working on this, I'd love to help out.
okay. So I have then Mark, Mary, and Richard to get together on that. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we'll have that on the 9th to have our next discussion about it. So probably next week we'll have Carrie try and arrange a Zoom with the 3 council members and kind of go over our thoughts. Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's what I had for Mayor's report. All right, item E is our council committee agenda requests. Are there any agenda requests? Okay, great, thank you. Moving on then, under new business. Item A tonight is the appointment to the Mount Vernon Planning Commission, and Chris Phillips is going to lead us in this particular item. Chris.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. Again, as many of you know, Christian Carlson has served our Planning Commission for the last 4 years. City staff is recommending the City Council to approve the Planning Commission reappointment of Christian Carlson to the Planning Commission.
Great.
Very short and sweet.
Any questions for Chris on this? I'm excited that Christian's willing to keep serving. So.
Yeah, no questions. And Christian has done a fantastic job on many different panels and groups for the city. So unless there's any discussion, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the reappointment of Christian Carlson to the Planning Commission.
I go second.
Okay, great. That's a motion by Richard and a second by Iris. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Thank you so much. Motion carries. We will get him sworn in and continue serving. All right, item B tonight, it is a public hearing regarding the continuation of interim regulations for severe weather shelters. And Rebecca Lowell I believe, is going to lead us on this, if I'm not mistaken. Rebecca?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So this is one of the agenda items that I talked to you about earlier this evening. This is the emergency weather shelter. So I'm just, the slide is going to look real familiar. But tonight what we're doing, we discussed that additional process that's necessary when we do interim regulations. We are completing part of that process tonight. This is the public hearing that's required whenever we do interim regulations that we have to do within 60 days of adoption of the first ordinance. So we'd be satisfying that this evening, and we'll allow the interim ordinance to continue in place. As I stated earlier this evening, what can get a little confusing about this is that now I'll be back before you on December 9th asking to adopt permanent regulations. I just want to be clear that tonight is not that hearing. Tonight is just the hearing where we're holding the public hearing that's required after we adopt interim regulations. So what you have in your council packets is an ordinance that's just memorializing the fact that we have met this procedural requirement and is keeping the interim regulations that you adopted in September in place until we can get the permanent ones adopted. So just as a reminder, as you know, you've looked at these regulations several times from 2019 till the present. Within these regulations, the mayor is the one who would declare a severe weather event. These regulations are a little bit different than our homeless encampments because shelters can be opened by a religious establishment, fraternal organization, public agency, or other entity. We just make sure that they're meeting basic life safety requirements. The building official would issue a temporary use permit, and then the shelter must close 2 days after the severe weather event is over. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions for Rebecca before we see if there was any public that wanted to speak for this hearing? Okay. All right. So because of our COVID situation, we have a public hearing. And so in our agenda, it really outlined if anyone wanted to provide comment regarding this, instructions to do so. And so I will ask Peter Donovan if we had received any emails from folks that wanted to comment on this.
Nothing to the mayor's office. And I would also ask Rebecca if anything was sent to the planning department.
Okay. Rebecca, anything sent to the planning department?
No, there was nothing sent to us, and we were allowing people to contact us until 4:30 today to let us know if they wanted to participate, and we didn't receive any requests for that either.
Okay, so that being said, I will open the public hearing, state that we did receive no comments regarding this particular issue, and then I will close the public hearing regarding the continuation of internal regulations for severe weather shelters. So at this point, is there any questions from City Council? If not, this would be adopting an ordinance 3818.
So this is just a continuation of the interim order, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And we've utilized this in the past. As a matter of fact, I think it was last year, right? The day after we approved it, the mayor declared an emergency cold weather situation, and the county stepped up and provided a space for that those that were in need. So so far it's worked well. Haven't heard any complaints from anybody. So I would move the adoption of ordinance 3818.
Second.
All right, motion by Mark and a second by Mary. Any further comment? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Same sign. All right, motion carries. And just a reminder to council and the public, we'll bring back regulations for December 9. And I believe there will be another hearing on that night. Is that correct, Rebecca?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll have that option when we get to December 9. All right. Moving on then, item C is also a public hearing, the continuation of interim regulations for safe parking facilities. Rebecca.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So again, this hearing that is before you, similar to the last agenda item, is also fulfilling that procedural requirement that we have a public hearing within 60 days of adoption of interim regulations. Council has adopted 2 other ordinances for this particular subject from 2019 to the present. This is ordinance requires that different than the emergency weather shelters, that it has to be on property owned or controlled by a religious organization. In some, these regulations would allow 1 vehicle per 10 existing parking spaces. It would require either a indoor and outdoor restroom. It has a 6-month maximum. However, that maximum could be extended by a councilmatic action. So it's not something that as staff we could extend, but city council could. There's no permit, no fees, and we would provide notice to the neighbors and the city if somebody was looking at creating one of these safe parking facilities. And again, these regulations were contained in Ordinance 3812 that was passed in late September. And we're just asking that these same regulations stay in place until we can get back to council for adoption of permanent regulations on December 9th.
Okay, any questions for Rebecca on this particular ordinance?
It's the only question I would have is, have we had anybody step up and indicate a desire to put in one of these safe parking areas?
We did, unfortunately, and I'll preface this by saying this is I've heard this secondhand, so I didn't hear this directly from the individual. But what I was told is that the gentleman that I had been answering questions with about the safe parking, they were moving forward and actively looking at putting a safe parking program together, but that he hadn't fully vetted the idea with the rest of his congregation. And so there's been a hold on that until everyone in the church congregation can get on the same page to have this program started.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this would be ordinance 3819.
I would move to approve ordinance. You got to do the open.
Sorry, Gary.
Yeah, you got to open that up, don't you? Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot. I apologize. Okay. Again, in our agenda, it showed how the public could comment on this, participate in the public hearing. So I'll ask Rebecca first. Did you get any folks that wanted to comment on this?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and I'll double check with Peter as well. Peter?
We had one inquiry about the code, but that was it. No comments or questions beyond that.
Thank you. Then we'll, seeing as we have opened the public hearing and not received any, we'll close the public hearing on the continuation of interim regulations for safe parking facilities. All right. Now, Gary, if you want to.
And that was
3819.
19. Okay, I'd move to approve ordinance 3819.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion by Gary and a second by Melissa. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed tonight? All right, thank you. Motion carries.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just folks who are listening know, as you said, we'll be talking about the subject again December 9th, it sounds like. And since we'll have another public hearing then, is it accurate to say that we'll be taking additional comments on these two ordinances, sets of regulations? And so folks know they can submit those comments. Tell me if I've got this wrong, at permittech@mountvernon.gov through roughly December 8th, or I don't want to set timelines here, but I just want folks to know that they can use the email address permittech@mountvernon.gov for comments on these.
Yes, they can. And so the details are always published on our agenda, which has the date and time. And usually we have it the same day up until about 4:30, just for business, purposes. So
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Moving on then, item D is the approval of collective bargaining agreement with IAFF firefighters and IAFF battalion chiefs. And our Human Resource Director, Aaron Cater, is here for this item. Aaron.
Hello, good evening. So I'm here to request that council authorize the mayor to sign the two collective bargaining agreements that we bargained with the IAFF local. As you're aware, we started negotiations late last year. We went through negotiations and then ended up in mediation early this year. Since then, we did put out a tentative proposal to them, which encompasses a 3.5% increase. It has some language changes, minor cleanup. And then the biggest thing was we did tweak the peak activity unit language, which is training hours or peak activity hours, that the BCs are allowed to assign to their employees. That was the biggest change in the contract, in addition to the 3.5% wage increase. The wage increase, the 3.5%, equals $159,665, which is approximately $45,000 more than what was budgeted at 2.5% earlier. Any questions on that?
I think, Aaron, you mentioned it was a one-year contract, so it'll be right back at the table.
Correct.
And your finance director, Doug Velasquez, already incorporated that particular amount of overage into our budget for this year, and so that's already been accounted for.
Correct. And again, it is for both contracts. It's for the firefighters and the BCs.
Okay, any questions for from City Council for Aaron?
If there's no questions, I'll just recommend that council authorize the mayor to sign both the IAFF collective bargaining agreements.
Second.
Okay, motion by Melissa. We'll give a second to Mark. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Item E tonight is the Skagit Multiple Agency Response Team Interlocal Agreement, and Police Chief Kamek is going to introduce this item. Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. And my internet seems to have been going in and out, so I hope I stay with you. This is a request to authorize the mayor to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Skagit County law enforcement agencies for independent investigation incidents involving police deadly force. This is not a new contract before you. Back in 2013, we created this means through the Skagit Multi-Agency Response Team to conduct these independent investigations. In 2018, we were back before you with this agreement where we added Oak Harbor, Island County, and the Washington State Patrol to the executive board that was done. However, in 2019, through the initiative process, the Washington Administrative Code 139-12030 was enacted by the legislature with the intent to enhance public trust in the integrity of independent investigations. And there was 5 driving principles there: independence, transparency, communication, a credible process, and incredible investigators. So it established standards for the investigation to be completed by an independent agency. It required that the involved agency in it to remain outside the investigation. No members from the involved agency could be part of it. Any specialized equipment owned by the agency couldn't be used, or if it was used, that there'd be an objective review, including citizen representation about the use of that equipment, restriction on information sharing, and abilities for the chief executive of the involved agency to be able to release investigation information if they felt it was urgent to the public interest. So that's kind of an overview of what the intent was behind this. The changes to the agreement that are before you tonight are just putting into our operating agreement all of those mechanics that were changed by the legislature. So some of the big pieces there are non-law enforcement community members are required to be part of independent investigation teams. We have done that, and there's language in there for it. Family liaisons to be able to be assigned within the team to be connected with the family of the involved subject in this incident. So not the subject themselves, but the family. If a person is believed to be involved with a federally recognized tribe, then there's notification that needs to be made to the governor's office and tribal liaisons. And then there's requirements for certification and training standards for commanders, supervisors, leads, and investigators. There's honorable behavior standards and other specific obligations. So within the agreement you have here is to bring it current with recent law changes. So the request here tonight is to allow the mayor to go ahead and enter into that agreement for Skagit County and for Mount Vernon.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Is there any questions for Chris on this?
This is really, Chris, this is just really a cleanup of the agreement we already had, or an adjustment to the agreement to incorporate the new state laws that are in place.
That's correct.
And do we know if any other of the municipalities that we'd be partnering with have approved this yet?
I know Anacortes has. I believe Skagit has, and Cedar Woolley. I think most of them have. I might be one of the last ones.
Well, we don't want you to be dead last, so I would move the approval of the interlocal agreement.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion by Mark and a second by Mary. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, thank you. Motion passes. Next up is item F. It is a renewal for Skagit, for an interlocal agreement with Skagit County. My goodness. Chief, this is yours too. Go ahead.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Again, thank you, Council, for making me hopefully last, and I will be on this one. This is a request for the Council authorizing the Mayor to enter an agreement to continue our law enforcement embedded social worker position within the Police Department. We've talked about this a lot over the last year, and it's been in place since 2016. The one change to this is Skagit County was very generous in actually increasing some of the flex funds rates. This contract before was $60,000. The city agrees to pay 1/3 of Aaron Von Femp's salary for embedded social work. We took a look at some of the programming costs that happened with her for like bus tickets, gas vouchers, lodging, clothing, and it was exceeding what we were paying as well. So the county was very gracious and increased it. So this year's contract is $72,000. Otherwise, the contract is, as you've seen previously, and this would be for January through December 2021.
Okay. Any questions for Chris on this particular item?
Yeah, I just actually want to say, well, I'm thankful for the partnership that the city has with the county. I think this has proven to be extremely successful in our community, and so I want to just commend Chief Kamek. This came under with Chief Dodd and the county for really forward thinking with this program. So thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
So I'd just like to add, I think this has been a great partnership with the county, and I think Aaron's done a great job for the city and for the county. And I think this is a good opportunity. A lot of folks say, what does the city of Mount Vernon do to assist those on the streets that are homeless, the veterans that can't get services? This is what we're doing. We've got an embedded social worker that reaches out, works with our police department, but reaches out and gives a hand up to those folks that needs certain services, whether it's alcohol or drug treatment, whether it's veterans that don't know what services are available for them, whether it's a runaway child and reconnecting them with their family. There's a number of stories that Erin has that she shared with council, and I just think it's been a wonderful program, and I'm really happy that we can continue that relationship with the county.
Yep. All right.
Can I just ditto that, and particularly recognizing how tough of a budget year it is, that the county stepped up here to partner in a tough year when everybody's digging into reserves. So thanks to them and to our own staff and Aaron in particular.
I'd like to move that we approve the interlocal agreement with Skagit County to continue this service.
Second.
Great. Motion by Mary and a second by Iris. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right. Item G tonight, it's for the good of the order, the COVID-19 pandemic response and discussion. There's a couple of things I thought I'd share with council. We have done our very best over this entire year to protect our 250 full-time employees. Before this week, we only had 2 folks that had been infected, and that was really early on. So, but now with a significant community spread, we're having either infections or exposures. And so we've got several employees that are under sort of a quarantine protocol, which is, the nightmare that keeps me up at night as to how we continue services. So we just hope that we're as minimal as possible and keeping not only those employees safe and well, but their families as well. So we're going to be facing that for the time being. We had talked about a community magazine, and so I wanted to let council know that we finally kind of just signed that off at the printers. What was a little bit stressful was we had it all ready. The governor, came out and made some proclamations last Sunday. So we had like 3 different changes. And at one point we just decided we'd date the material. And this is effective information as of the 20th of November, and so it is in press. We're endeavoring to have that delivered to each household in the city. There's a few little rural routes that are mixed in with regular routes, so we'll make sure we cover those. But we're excited for the COVID CARES funding to be able to put that information out to our community. We also, just due to sort of the increasing numbers, the city Mount Vernon coordinated a full page ad in the Herald last Sunday. Hopefully you saw some of it. It's very simple, full page. Please celebrate Thanksgiving within your household. And so our graphic person who was helping on the magazine jumped right in to help us with that. And the city did pay for that fully with our CARES funding, and I've appealed to the other cities to help pitch in. So I want to thank the city of Cedro-Woolley for pledging money to help cover that as well, and we'll keep after the rest of them. And then testing, it's not, of course, our testing site, but so that the public knows there is the public COVID testing has moved from the college down to Skagit Fairgrounds. And so any information that folks need, they can certainly click on our website, but it will link you right back into skagitcounty.net for information on testing, but that's available. So that's just what I had as a kind of a brief update on what we're doing around the pandemic issues right now. So any questions from council about that? Okay, then. That completes our
Maybe a comment, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just to make sure that everybody in the community is tracking as best as possible, that, as the mayor said, we do have a very significant level of community spread. It's a order of magnitude over the threshold that we were at just a month ago, 250 cases per 100,000 over the last 2 weeks. And it's more disconcerting even than that is the other two metrics that they track on the dashboard is the licensed beds being occupied by patients in the hospitals are now well over the target threshold, and the percent of licensed beds occupied by COVID-19 patients is very near the threshold as well. So even in our community, right, we're not immune. And so folks, please be safe out there and watch out for your community.
Yep, definitely. Okay, so that completes our agenda items. I'll ask our city attorney if there's a need for an executive session this evening.
Yes, I'd invite the mayor and members of city council to enter into an executive session to discuss with legal counsel enforcement action, litigation or potential litigation to which the city, the governing, acting in their official capacity is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in either adverse legal or adverse financial consequence to the city. 20 minutes, no action after.
Okay, thank you. Then with that, we'll be adjourned into executive session at 7:35.